I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer. Welcome back to Educational Warfare, where we're taking the fight to the issues that are affecting education. So thankful for everybody who listened to our first episode, Exhaustion, the War at Work. That is out now, so find it anywhere you can find your podcast. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify, we're on Pandora, we're on Amazon Music. We are wherever you want to find us, so please check out episode 1. You can find us also on Twitter at EDU Warfare, all one word. And you can email us at the show at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. Today what we wanted to do is, here at Educational Warfare, we had our first episode. We talked about exhaustion, the war at work, all the things at work as educators and professionals that make us exhausted. We touched on class sizes, cell phones, the modern teenager, politics creeping its way into our profession, and the idea of grooming. And what we wanted to do is, in between each content episode where we talk about the war at work, the war at home, or the war within, whatever topic we're discussing, we want to hear from you in between those episodes. That way you help drive our content. This isn't just us talking about these things. We want it to be a living, breathing thing, because that's what is affecting us, and that is what is making our jobs difficult, whatever topic we're talking about. So we want you to help build the content. So today's episode is a mailbag episode. We had some great feedback from listeners. I really appreciate it. My partner, Dr. Jackson, really appreciated it. Some of the insights you gave, it honestly was amazing. So today we're going to break down some of those emails, cover some of the issues a little deeper, and we're just going to chat basically with you. So again, anytime you want to reach out, please do it at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. We really want you guys to be a part of this. We want you to feel like you're in it. We want us to be able to talk and figure things out and just maybe feel a little better every single day. And that's the goal here. So in this episode, I'm going to be reading your emails, digging deeper into them, helping expand that idea of what's causing exhaustion. A lot like we're just sitting here having a conversation. I think that's the great part of it and what'll really be helpful. So let's go ahead and jump into some of those emails. We had a lot of great emails from people, so many people saying that they really enjoyed it, and that means the world to us. Rebecca says she loves it and she can't wait to hear more. But our first email breaking down the content is from Andrea.
You've got mail.
And she reached out and she said, I especially appreciated how you explained the development of the teenage brain, highlighting how psychological and neurological changes drive their behavior. This aspect is often overlooked, but understanding it can revive some of the pressure on teachers, reminding them that these behaviors aren't personal or unique to individual students. They're just a normal part of adolescence. First of all, thank you so much for emailing in, Andrea. That is a great point. And breaking down their development a little more, we went in slightly how their prefrontal lobe is not as developed as ours. And I think you have to also explain, as part of that, is what does that mean exactly? Like, we know your prefrontal lobe is where we get our logic and our reasoning skills. So if theirs is underdeveloped, what exactly is happening? So in your standard brain, right, your prefrontal lobe, logic, reason, talked about that. Your amygdala is in the center of your brain. And that's kind of our emotion center, right? That's where our fight or flight response has taken place based on things that have happened to our past. Your brain basically learns and applies, what are things I should fight against? What are things I should be afraid of? For example, if you were bitten by a dog when you were younger, you're going to have a natural flight response, most likely, to dogs, even though you're older. Even though your frontal lobe is developed, you have a natural fear of dogs because your brain has recorded what happened when you're younger, says that was not good, and I need to protect myself from that in the future. So even though you can logic that it's a dog, it has an owner, obviously it's not eaten that owner yet, so it's probably not dangerous. When a dog kind of approaches you quickly, even on a leash, you kind of curl up. That's your body's flight response. Your body's saying, your brain is saying, oh no, not again, and it's trying to protect you. So our teenagers, without a developed prefrontal lobe or prefrontal cortex, they basically have less data going to that prefrontal cortex. So a lot of times they live in that amygdala. If you kind of think of it as like a ping pong game of data. So when you see something that upsets you or you become emotional, your brain takes it from the amygdala, bounces it to your prefrontal cortex, and then decides what it should do. If it is something a threat, after you've reasoned and logicked it out, it bounces it back to the amygdala, fight or flight kicks in. And if it is something that you're like, this is not a problem, you then reason it out and you could lessen that response. So teenagers, without theirs being as developed, they basically live in that emotional center. This is why it's really hard when they are upset to logic with them, to reason with them, because they don't have that bounce. They're getting just a little bit of data from that prefrontal cortex, but it's mostly just living in that amygdala. That's why when they're angry, they're super hard to calm down. That is why they get angry quickly. So one of the best things you have to understand about this, how is this driving exhaustion for teachers, is that they're basically, if you understand this, then you can get why in those moments of anger or frustration, they're not coming back down like you can. You know, a student can get up in your face. They get upset, they walk up to you, and they basically say something awful. As a professional, most of us don't really react. We logic out that, okay, they are upset, and this is a problem, and I need to talk to them. But they're not in that same space. So even if you make a good point, they're not on the same level as you. And this is why many of those behaviors in the classroom can cause such problems and exhaust us, because you feel like you're doing the right thing. You feel like I was professional, I calmed them down, and it didn't work. And that's exhausting because failure naturally exhausts us. Our brain doesn't really understand why we failed because it's done all of its processes, it's gone to its logic center, and now it's been thrown back of what now? So that's exhausting. And you have to understand that. And Andrew makes a great point there, that if you do understand that, then it makes those not seem personal. And teachers, professionals, we can't take these things personal because they're not. We have to find ways. So give them time to calm down. Tell them it's a safe place. Often things they can do that. So the blood rushes from the top of their brain, right? So also the blood in this is also making this even worse. So instead of the blood going to the prefrontal cortex and allowing them to reason that, it all filters down to that amygdala. So they really can't even think straight. They can't reason almost at all. A couple ways to beat this. One, looking up. If you can get them to a calm space, ask them to look up real quick. That actually activates, that makes your brain go back to the prefrontal cortex. It sends the blood back up there because it's activating your visual cortex. Or they could chug a bottle of water. I've talked to many great administrators, and when they have a student in their office who maybe was just in a fight or some type of altercation, they literally walk in, the student be sitting there, and instead of immediately engaging in conversation about it, which again makes them defensive because they're naturally going to think that you're coming after them, these administrators and teachers just hand them a bottle of water and say, drink that. May get a little pushback, but just say, hey, drink that, then I'll talk to you. Once they start drinking that time, that little bit of time to drink it, will allow their blood to kind of move, seep back up in the prefrontal cortex. And water also helps release cortisol, which is a calming chemical. So those type of things we can do to calm them down. So take a moment. Remember, if this isn't personal, it's not an attack on you, then you should do all the steps to help get them to a space to figure it out. So a few seconds of calming them down is fine. You know, we don't always have to start talking immediately. Take them out in the hall and just wait a second. Just look at them, say, take some time. I'm here for you. And all those things start to filter back in, and that can help make some of those extreme behaviors even better. And this works even for the lesser behaviors. When you can see somebody's just starting, you're in your classroom and you start to see two students, you notice the rhetoric, their language, their way they're talking to each other is starting to get a little worrisome. Our teacher ears, you might be with another student, but we're always listening. We're like a great radar. We're always kind of listening around the room, and you hear, oh, that's not a normal conversation. Something's happening. You can do this even when it's starting, and that'll get them back to that normalized level. And that's an important thing to remember. Also with these developments, I think it's important to discuss when we're talking about these behaviors that students naturally understand hierarchies. Okay, they get it. All the students know exactly what little clique they're in. So they're desperately, even as much as they don't say it, they desperately want to be in that cool class or that, like people like me hierarchy. And so therefore they may do some behaviors that are totally against who they are. You may see this in your own children, that you have your child and all of a sudden they're the kid you know, and all of a sudden they're doing things and acting ways that are completely different. We often chalk this up to like, oh, they're teenagers. And that's a huge part of it. Obviously, puberty and all the changes that do that really make this a drastic change. But it's also a part of that social function to where they're looking for and wanting to be in that different class. So they may act a certain way to be seen as cool, or the group they're hoping for, they may want to make laugh. And again, not personal. If we start to understand this, then we can really see what's happening. We're playing at a different game. We have the instruction booklet instead of just being a player with the students. And that's where we want to be. We want to be in charge. That's how you limit that exhaustion. When you're in control of all these situations, it is easier to manage them, and therefore we get less exhausted. So they may be trying to be cool, and they may be trying to get friends. They may just be frustrated. But if you understand where they're coming from, that development, then you're going to have better results in fixing those behaviors. I talk about this in my book, The Two Backpacks, Understanding Teens and What They Carry, of how they're doing that. Students often have to pick between cool and lame. And we see this on social media all the time. Again, changes in your child. We see this with fashion. They start dressing the same way. I always like to make a joke that in the fall, every single teenage girl ends up looking like Han Solo because they wear the high boots. They got some type of jeans or leggings on under them. They're wearing like a white, tight cotton undershirt and then a vest. Basically Han Solo. Why they all look the same? Because that's the fashion that's in. So they're trying to pick that cool name. And we've all seen this in your own kids. You may have experienced this. You drive to school with your daughter. And when you drove her to school before, you're in your truck, your car, and you're listening to the music you've listened to that she or your son, he has grown up to like. So you're sitting there and you're belting out a country song, Florida Georgia Line. You guys are listening, singing it, fun. And all of a sudden, you get in there, you put on the music, and your kid says, can we listen to something else? That's lame. And you're kind of shocked. You're like, hold on, we've been doing this forever, and you've never said it was lame before. What's changed? But, being a good parent, you're like, okay, like, what do you want to listen to? And, as a parent also, just a little sidebar, don't immediately push back against that. I know that's your time. Again, part of that being exhausted in any profession is you get those little moments that's your time. So you love those times with your kid, and listening to your music helps calm you before work. But, help them figure out what they like. You'll have a lot of better results for your personal relationship. So being a good parent, you're probably like, okay, what do you want to listen to? And you're thinking maybe they like a new country band or they're just tired of that song, and they say something drastically different. Right? Maybe she's like, oh, I want to listen to Billie Eilish. And you're like, where did that come from? Or your kid knows what you'll probably say yes or no to. So they may really want to be listening to Cardi B, but they know that won't fly. So maybe she'll say Billie Eilish or something. A lot of that comes from that constant pressure to be cool. They don't want to be in a situation where all their friends are talking about this one thing, this one band, this one type of music. And they're like, oh, I don't like that. That immediately makes them an outsider. And remember, teens are pulling. They're wanting to be part and accepted. They want that. If you could put it on a scale, right, a two-sided scale, kind of like scales of justice, where it's like what you and your child like and used to share between what their peers find acceptable, they're probably going to pick their peers at this point. And that can be hurtful and, again, exhausting to feel that change, but because they want to be accepted by them because they're trying to develop. There's two reasons they really do this. One is they're trying to make their own identity, and that's completely fine. It can be scary and, again, exhausting as a parent for your kid to drastically change. And obviously we have to monitor this. We can't just let like extreme, possibly dangerous or harmful changes happen. These slight ones with dress and preferences for movies, films, things they do, we have to explore that and be fine. So they're trying to find out who they are so they can adapt and start to flush out their own values, bouncing them off what you've taught them. So you are still there. It's very easy when teenagers start to pull away. It's very easy to feel like you're no longer there, like you're no longer important, but you are. They're not going to explain it. If you made them explain it, they may act like you're torturing them, but you are. They're bouncing out the values you taught them. So they're doing that. The second reason is joining the popular trend of the time. Like I said, there's this constant push, especially with social media. Students and teens we found that they live now, and again, I talk about this in chapter 8 of my book, we found through research and everything that teens basically live this dual reality. They have their physical body and their physical self that you see every day, the things they like, how they talk, but they also have a digital body that they've created. They've curated it. They've made it seem exactly how they want their followers or potential followers to believe they are. And they have to constantly do that. So this is why you might see females, right? Female teens constantly taking pictures, selfies in random times. They want to put out there like, look how cute and fun I am, to curate that they're cute and fun, or that they're doing something cool. Adults, we do this too. We go on social media and what do? We post a meal we made. So everybody's like, look, I cook and I cook well. Or we post a vacation. Look how much fun me and my family have. Or look how adventurous I am. We do that. But for us, it's more of just sharing, going out there, helping friends we may not have been able to connect with for a while, see our lives. But for teens, it is showing them that I'm acceptable, that I'm fun. Please follow. Please like me. Because the scary thing about that digital world that I'm talking about is they can be found to be acceptable or not acceptable simply by their profile. How many followers do they have? How many likes did they get on their last post? And that's that drive to keep adding and getting likes, keep posting pictures because they want to be found acceptable. And that's a scary thing. So that's what we're fighting against. We're going against that. So easy thing to try to filter through and remember as you're doing that. Are they doing this because they're angry? Are they doing this because they're bored? Are they doing this because they want somebody to laugh? Are they doing this because they want to look cool? Filter all that through when you're dealing with those little behaviors and understand it's not about you. It's not a personal attack. And that if you can figure that out, if you can work through that, then you'll be able to better get your class under behavior and hopefully limit your exhaustion. Andrea also said here, she mentioned a great point. I love this, and I hope everybody goes and sees this. She said, in a professional development, we learned about the True Colors personality test, and that most teachers, when you go to this personality test, fall under the blue and gold personality types. These types present traits like empathy, dependability, and unwavering commitment to their students. All right. If you look at all the colors, I went to true-colors.com. That's where you can find this and kind of see a breakdown of it and even take your own test and see where you fall. Just kind of break down the colors for you real quick, because I do love this point she made and kind of how it could be exhausting. Not only you're dealing with this, but it could be a conflict between your general personalities. And that obviously will cause that because it's very hard to change that. That's something we can't affect. So the orange personality, if you take this test, orange people are adventurous, and that means action-oriented, seeks fun, variety, stimulation, excitement. Green personality, they're curious, they're problem solvers, they seek knowledge and understanding. The blue personality is harmonious, they're compassionate, and they seek to encourage and to care. And then the gold personality, they're responsible, dependable, they seek to follow rules and respect authority. So now remember what Andrea said when she kind of read this article. Most teachers fall under the blue and gold. So harmonious, seeks to encourage and care, and responsible, seeks to follow rules and respect authority. So those type of personalities bouncing off each other can cause problems. On that site, they found 46% of teachers were in the blue personality and 46% were in the gold. Like we said, that most of them fall under that. Okay, so rules, caring, compassionate. If you look at the general population, so non-teachers, just random people taking this, 35% were in gold, but 35% were in the orange, which again is adventurous, action-oriented, seeks fun, variety, stimulation, excitement. Where 15% were in the green, which is curious, they're problem solvers, want knowledge, understanding, and then only 15% were in the blue, which is harmonious, seeks to encourage and care. So when you think about that, teachers are this unique breed. Like, we go into this profession because we are compassionate, we seek to encourage and care. And also most teachers go into the job because they like the structure of the job. What is it? It's rules, it's accountability, it is every day can be organized, categorized, and very ordered. So that's what teachers want. And that's the personality we have. But then we're teaching where students fall under that same general population thing. They tested students and they almost mimicked the general population with 35% in orange, 35% in gold, 15 in green, 15 in blue. So you have teachers who want order and structure, but to encourage. And then you have students who want variety and adventure. That can make it exhausting because it's not only they're not just listening in class or they're not interacting in the lesson the way they want. They could just be doing different things. They could be bouncing off of what you expect. Your personality is telling you this should happen, and their personality is saying this should happen. That's why kids get up and wander. They want that adventure. That's a little bit of adventure that they can have. They go up and wander. They might go check this. That's why you're constantly saying, Jimmy, sit back down, right? That's what they want. So you have to find ways to fight that. And what Andrea says here is this also can lead to burnout because you have unrealistic demands. Our natural desire to support students often makes teachers feel like we're set up for failure when we're asked to do so much with so little support. And eventually we start to burn out and we start to feel those pressures to close gaps that we honestly can't control. And I just need to say this is a rock star email. Honestly, like this is great. Thank you so much, Andrea, because that's a great point there when we're talking about this. We're talking about all the reasons we feel exhausted. It's sometimes something we can't even be asked to control. And this talks about the demand for the job that we went over in our first episode, how we literally are asked to do so much. And one of the things we're asked to do is to get this attention from our students, this understanding, while also keep them controlled. Okay. And then we have to have them perform. So we have to keep them controlled in this way. We have to teach them this knowledge. And then we're asked to perform on state tests, standardized tests, whatever your state may do. And those two things don't go together. If you maybe allowed teachers to take kids outside a little more and do things out there and have lessons like that, then they might learn a little better. But we all know that's hard to control. We'd be exhausted because it'd be like herding cats a lot of times. You'd have to come with these super crazy, unique, and interesting lessons. And then you'd have to hope it all work. But we're asking them, hey, learn this, but keep them in this environment. Don't let this happen. And then we get little support for that. And that's exhausting. And so this natural fight between the types of personality is when one thing teachers are having to control with very little support from our governments, from our states. I'm not going to say admin aren't doing this because, again, they're just trying to follow what's being told to them. So it's not an attack on principals or anything because they, again, have to maintain order in the school. But our support system for this idea is basically just do it. And that's exhausting. That leads to burnout. It leads us being so tired. It leads us to be just not know what we should do. And here's the point of this. Teachers care a lot. And that leads into the burnout. We care about our kids. We care about how they're doing. That is part of the blue personality, that we're harmonious, we're compassionate, we seek to encourage and to care. So we care a lot. And all professions care about what they're doing. But teaching is one profession that there aren't really tangible rewards. There are no promotions coming. There's no extra money coming. It is watching your students do well. That's the reward. And when you don't see that, or when you feel like you're not doing a good job on that, that just burns us out. A teacher's care, where other professions, maybe I hope I get a raise. Maybe I'll get that bonus. Ooh, if I put everything into it, I'll get that promotion. That's burnout in other professions. A teacher's care is one of the soul. We care that these children are safe, that these children are growing, that these children are learning. It is something you can't see, and it's something we're asked to show on a standardized test with a data point. And that can cause burnout because you can sit in a meeting, look at your data, know that it is just okay, right? You might just be on par with the state. And have conversations with admin and people who say, oh, well, you're on par with the state, but we need to show bigger growth. What can you do? And in your heart, you're saying, I watched this kid go from where he wouldn't talk to where he was raising his hand. Still didn't do well on the test. He was not a crazy high performer because he'd just broken out of that bubble and he hadn't learned yet to take that I'm raising my hand in class, part of that prefrontal lobe not being developed. He hadn't learned to take that logic and apply it to tests. He didn't see that they were connected yet because they just can't see that a lot of times yet. Still didn't perform well, but you saw him grow, raised his hand. Beginning of the year, may not even have been able to get that kid to smile or even look up at you because he was so shy. Now he's raising his hand. So you saw growth, but you were told you weren't showing growth. And that causes burnout because, again, this is a care of the soul. We pour yourself into something. We pour it in there. I don't know any teachers. There's stereotypes out there. I don't know any teachers who come to work and don't pour themselves into it. Because I think part of us know that if we don't, kids, part of their developmental thing, part of their protection thing in their brain, they're very able to pick out phonies quickly. That is part of their development. It's a protection their brain does. They can see when something's not legit, and that helps them be protected, helps them survive. So if they know you're winging it, you all of a sudden have way more issues than the average teacher. And teachers, again, care. So you go in there and you pour yourself into it and it exhausts you. But it's not only exhaustion of, oh, I'm so tired because I've been working late and I have to fill out all these things that other professions may have, or I have to do this and this. And that's just basically a physical, a little mental exhaustion. Teaching can exhaust you when you pour yourself into it. It can exhaust you physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And thank you again so much, Andrea. Let's get into another email here.
You've got mail.
Jake emails and says, if you ask me, the magic pill for reducing exhaustion in education would be twofold. The first is lower class sizes, and the second, increase school personnel. Jake goes on to say, however, achieving this is unlikely anytime soon, given the current staffing shortages and declining interest in the teaching profession. Without major shifts in resource and support, educators will likely continue to bear an unstable load. One that is damaging to both their well-being and their ability to support students effectively. Jake, that's an awesome point. For anybody out there who is thinking like, oh, well, like class sizes, like you guys talked about that in episode 1, and we did because it is a real thing. A lot of people say you're teachers, you teach students, you want less of them now? Isn't that kind of saying you want less workload? Yes, it is. Not embarrassed to say it, because that workload's different. We're not asking to do less. We're asking to do what we do even better because you have less personalities, less chances to have these disruptions. Again, we went back to talk about cell phones. We talked about how teens are trying to have that social interaction, how they're trying to gain cool points or work in that hierarchy. And the more students you have in your classroom, the more students you have doing that, and the more behaviors you have to control, and the less content you're getting to cover because you're managing those other things that aren't teaching. It's a part of your job to manage behavior. We know that. But when you give us super large classes, it is super impossible to do that. It is frustrating. You might spend 10 minutes trying to get 2 or 3 kids to do what you need to do. And what are the other students doing while you're doing that? They're not working. They're watching. Because that's drama and their brains love it. They're not sitting there studiously filling out the worksheet while you're trying to get these 3 kids to do what they're supposed to do. They are watching, they're listening. Is somebody going to say something crazy? Somebody getting sent to the office? So those 3 students are now affecting the rest of it. Nobody's working. So simply lowering it a few could help you manage those behaviors. But again, he says that there is an issue with that because there's staffing shortages, and that's true. According to McKinsey, more than 61% of school administrators have found it difficult to hire personnel. We're finding it hard to find teachers, substitute counselors, other administrators, and let's go on top of this. This is post-pandemic, of course. Go on top of this, fewer college students, 1/3 than previous numbers prior to 2008. enter and complete teacher education and preparation programs. So we're not only having problems getting teachers to fill roles, because I think teachers are starting to feel more agency. We're starting to understand that this is our life. We're starting to understand that exhaustion, and we're not willing to jump into an awful situation to continue just to do the job. We want the job to be the right one for us. And society's kind of pushed back on that, being a little mad, like, why aren't teachers doing their job? Well, whatever job you do, why don't you work in the worst possible environment to do it? Because you don't want to hate life. Teachers don't either. But you also now have fewer people going into the profession. They're not even trying to look because of all this. And can you blame them? I'm thinking about, we talk about post-pandemic numbers. I'm going to dig into this with Dr. Jackson a little more in episode 2, the war at home, and how this brings exhaustion to us. So a little preview here. But when you're looking at that, when you're looking at people joining the profession, why would they join it? If you are an 18-year-old about to graduate high school and you see how teachers are talked about, and you see the things being said about them, and you see the laws coming down to basically curtail everything. I mean, we could even talk about, in the state of Tennessee, they passed a law that classroom libraries had to be uploaded and categorized. You had to make sure there was nothing bad in there, which, one, ridiculous and exhausting, because I don't know any teacher who had an inappropriate book in their classroom libraries. Because remember also, high school teachers, English teachers, probably a classroom library for reading. Most other subjects might have a few in there in case they do like a, hey, read or whatever in class. We don't have many books. So this is basically attacking elementary school teachers and English teachers, ELA teachers in middle school, and saying, hey, now you have to do this extra work. I need you to go through every book you have, upload it to this, make sure it doesn't go against that. I don't know any teachers who want inappropriate books in their classroom, but that's something they had to do. And that's another thing that's exhausting. Think about the pandemic. Think about 2020, the end of 2020. So we're talking March. Districts down in Tennessee closed like March 6th in 2020. From March to August, we were heroes. The world talked about teachers just, oh my gosh, can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you're taking care of your family while also teaching classes online. Just a personal story during the pandemic. My wife's job, she was in a private educational business at the time, and her boss, who was just a very special character, I'm going to leave it there, he didn't let them stop coming to work. He didn't believe there was an issue, so she had to go to work. So I'm here at my house, and I have to teach my AP classes and my other class, but I also have 3 children here who are basically 12 and under, and I had to do their work. I had to teach my classes. Then I'd have to run in and make sure they were doing their work. We set up desks in each of their room. We were just making sure they did their stuff. So I'd come in, check on them. My youngest, basically, I remember one time we were doing the stuff, the hands on the clock, like learning time. And one of my other children asked me to come in and check their work. So I went in and I come back out. I was working with him at the kitchen table. I come back out and he's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, well, I was gone 2 minutes. Where'd he go? And I'm looking around, I'm calling for him, nothing. And I look, and he is outside on the trampoline, just jumping, living his best life, right? I went away for 2 seconds, out there living his best life. He crawled through the doggy door because he couldn't reach the deadbolt at the time just because that door's locked because nobody gone out it. So he just crawled through the doggy door, went on the trampoline. We were doing things like that. It was funny, called him back in, kept going, but bouncing all that, all of us were doing something like that, most likely. We were heroes. And then by the beginning of the next school year, so by August, maybe creeping into September, October, we went from hero to villain within 3 months. I don't know any other profession that does that. We got no grace period. And why would you want to go into that profession? So there are less teachers coming into the profession as a whole. According to the National Education Association, NEA, there are 500,000 plus fewer educators in the American public school system post-pandemic. That's a problem. So we want smaller class sizes, but there are less people joining the profession. So now you have people needing to do more and more. Take this, hey, our English teacher quit. Nobody's taking the job, so we have to break up their classes and put them in yours. Or you have to teach English on top of this, we'll give somebody else your history class. You teach English because you have it on your license. That's exhausting. And we don't say no. That's the issue with education is that, again, we care. So where most professions, they'd say, nah, I already do a job. You need to hire somebody for that. That's unfair. We say, okay, because we don't want to upset our administrators who, remember, we talked about this last episode, are doing our evaluations. We don't want to upset them. We don't want to let kids down. Like you just walk by and it's just kind of a permanent sub in there. It doesn't have an English background. So these kids aren't learning anything. What affects those scores, again, we talked about for the whole school. Then you're going to have to sit in meetings and be like, why are our scores bad? Not anybody outside of education gets the blame for making it that way where teachers don't want to join. It's, again, on us because that's easy for people to put the blame. So we say yes. And we do it. We pour ourselves into a subject we may not be super comfortable in to try to help them. That burnout leads to exhaustion. But lower class sizes definitely would help. I think it's a great idea. There needs to be some way to figure this out. Dr. Jackson talked about you have class size limits. People think that they helped you. They passed laws to take care of that. But again, one, it's not really any way to check that for the law unless somebody turns it in. And two, it's easy just to shift that around to avoid breaking the law. So it's not really a true thing. It needs to be researched, find a finite number, and then attach that to a law and then make sure that we follow that. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. So we continue to struggle with these giant class sizes, and it is difficult for everybody. I think I'm comfortable saying this. One of the most nervous moments you have as a teacher when the new year is starting and you're just kind of waiting, it's a summer, you're squeezing as much joy out of those last summer days as you can, and you start getting those work emails, your summer professional development is about to start, leading off in the school year, and you get an email that says rosters are now uploaded. To me, at least, and let us know, email us and see if it's for you or if I'm just a giant weirdo, educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. That's one of the most nerve-wracking moments because I click on it, and for any non-educators, when you click on your rosters in most systems, you see the class, how your classes are organized, what periods they'll be, and then there's a number of how many students are in it. And that's the part that makes me nervous. What's it going to be? Am I going to get 28? Am I going to get 30? Or I have a reasonable number? Another exhausting part is my second period going to be 21. That's a reasonable number. I don't think teachers will complain about that number. A lot of times people think when we say class sizes, we're saying, we want 5 kids in there. Actually, a small class is harder to deal with, in my opinion, because if they're not engaging, you're basically just standing up yelling at them when you're lecturing almost. I'm just talking, obviously I have a louder voice. And I'm just sitting there lecturing about something or talking about something, and I have 5 kids staring at me and they're not engaging. So it just seems really odd. So we're not asking for 5 kids in a class. 20 is reasonable. 23, very doable. But is my second period going to have 20 and then my fourth period going to have 28? That's exhausting too, because it's not only, more kids. Your brain has to now process how to make that happen. What is this going to be like? How am I going to change? We are constantly molding in this profession as teachers. We are the greatest actors. We adapt and change and make sure we're giving those classes what you need. And then oftentimes you can't do the same lesson because it just doesn't work with that many kids. So now we're doing 2 lessons for the same topic. Again, exhausting. Nobody wants this profession to become so bad that it has to be changed again by people who aren't in it. And you could argue from some groups that's kind of the goal. It's a political topic that, maybe there's a political podcast show that will really dig into that. We may at some point, because we're not afraid to have those candid conversations. Remember, we're taking the fight to these issues, so stay tuned for that. But it's still super hard to have a productive, happy school environment when you have these issues and low support staff. Again, not being able to get subs. Most schools have a list that goes out of, hey, these people aren't here today. Could teachers cover it? And they've even had to incentivize teachers. For anybody not out there, now you can get paid to cover that class, which is super nice. One school I was at, the secretary there, she was a wonderful woman and super nice. She was very old. She started working at the school when it opened in 1961, and this was in 2017. She literally graduated in May and started working at the front desk in September and had been there since then, which is an amazing accomplishment. But when she'd call my class and she'd be like, Dr. Lauer, can you cover this class? How would I say no? Like, I'm going to make this person who's running the front desk now have to search again for somebody to do it. So of course I'd say yes. And then I'd lose my planning period. And now I'd be behind. Or, I'd go in there and try to plan and just do the lesson that the kids are doing. So I'm just sitting in there monitoring behaviors. It's difficult. And that is these little things that nobody sees that just add up, that make you exhausted. You will be more tired that evening when you had to cover a class than you were if you didn't, because now you're bringing more stuff home, which is what we're talking about in our next episode, the things that follow us home. So it's a great point by Jake there. And what the point of this whole show is, we're bringing these issues out there. We're attacking them so they can no longer attack us. And I really appreciate Jake bringing that up. So thank you so much, Jake. One last email here that we're going to go through. It's been awesome talking about these. You guys have some great ideas. I am just floored by some of these, reading through some. It was hard picking which ones to talk about. And I just appreciate you all so much. So please keep them coming.
You've got mail.
Paul mentions that aspect of exhaustion for him is the accumulation of rough days. And I had to stop when I read that and was like, that's awesome. Like, putting it that way, the accumulation of rough days. Other professions, you may get frustrated with a task. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I have to go to all these meetings and do this. But teaching is the frustration of not a task. None of us are frustrated we have to teach. I think that's something we have to talk about. None of us are exhausted because we have to do our job. That's what we want to do. What we get frustrated is that what we do is a set of personalities, and those personalities happen to be your clients. Every other jobs, you may have an annoying coworker or a demanding boss or a demanding coworker who you have to work with and it's just hard to keep up with. But you're working to then service whatever your client is. And oftentimes they're some invisible force. You may have a client who's very pushy as well. And that's just something you have to deal with, but that's kind of few and far between. But many of those clients are a name on a piece of paper, a name on a spreadsheet. Your boss is pushy to make sure you're doing well. But the people who we're dealing with, those rough personalities at time, or those very different personalities at time, those are our clients. We have to do things for them while also deal with that. And so when you get this accumulation of bad days, just Tuesday, this kid was just wouldn't work. You did all your awesome teacher strategies, which all of us have a toolbox full of those. Nothing worked. He was still defiant. And you're like, do I send him to the office and cause this issue and then have to explain what happened? And of course, once we send some to the office, one of the first questions is, well, what did you do? Again, like, we're not professionals and don't have a toolbox because we all know what to do. Very few teachers I know just send kids to the office for nothing. We go through all the steps. Like, if my admin knows that if a kid goes to the office from my classroom, that is everything has been exhausted. They're almost surprised. Like, I'll get an email like, Dr. Lauer, did you mean to send this student? But yes. So, but you get that day to where you get to that point. Okay, let's stop there. You had to get to that point. That's exhausting. You had to be so frustrated that you had to send them out. Or maybe you did a couple things at Toolbox on Tuesday and activity 1 didn't work, activity 2 didn't work, activity 3 worked. You got him going. You maybe gave him a little novelty in the assignment, something unique about it. Because remember, he's probably that orange personality that Andrea, thank you again, Andrea, mentioned. So you got something. Wednesday comes in, same thing. Can't do that same novelty thing, different lesson. You also, again, class size, might have 26 other students to deal with. Finally, do you blow up? And people get mad when teachers do get upset. Again, cell phones in the classroom. One thing we didn't talk about is being recorded. That's terrifying to every teacher. That's exhausting thinking about that. Even just giving a straight up lesson, can I be recorded, mixed, cut up to where something I said sounds bad, then it wasn't bad, taken out of context? There's now, again, we'll probably talk about AI in another episode to really break that down. But now they can clone your voice with AI. They get enough content of your voice, they can get an AI clone, and these students can find stuff that most of us can't. They just are internet. They can't research and find where you have to find historical facts or English facts that have been out for 50 years. But man, they can find that free AI clone, download it, and make that so you can have your voice sounds just like you, pretty dang close, saying something crazy. That part is exhausting. So we're dealing with all of that. And if we blow up, it's a story. Oh, this teacher did this, teacher that. Whereas anything else, that's human. You've dealt with this day after day after day, and finally you're to that breaking point. Or you take a day off. There's chronic absenteeism. 30% of teachers have said that they are now being more chronically absent than they have before. And walk down the hall, next time you're about to take a day off. All of us have done this, so teachers listening are like, yeah, I know that, duh. But anybody else, or a teacher haven't tried it, walk down the hall, next time you have a day off, if somebody asks, oh, mental health day, and they'll laugh and go, yep, we need those. It's not even like if you're just, I need a day, even that's not the reason you say it. People totally understand. And think about that. You're burning a vacation day. You're burning a sick day, basically, possibly just to take a deep breath. That is a problem. That means you're burnt out. That means you're exhausted. And it's these accumulation of bad days. Again, we talked about a Gallup poll from 2022. 44% of American K through 12 teachers reported feeling burned out often or always. And again, 44%, according to the Wall Street Journal, again, 44% of public schools posted teaching vacancies in early 2020. And again, from Gallup, K-12 teachers are the number one most burnt out profession in the United States of America. That's from Gallup. Super reliable source. Or say it again. K-12 teachers are the number one most burnt out profession in the United States of America. That's the exhaustion we're talking about. That's what we're fighting back against. Just talking about this, putting it out there, being able to say these things, being able to be with each other and just hear them and nod along. Nodding is good. I hope you're nodding along to this, right? I hope you're here listening and just maybe I'm not alone. You are not alone and you're doing a good job. I promise you, you're doing a good job. Tell your friends, tell them about the podcast, tell them to follow, subscribe, give us 5 stars, leave a review, and have them listen along just so we can nod, so we can start these conversations, because these things need to be known. A lot of this aren't. Teachers, we want to go in and do our job. We want to keep our head down. We want to do well. And we need to fight back against this. And talking about it like we are, Dr. Jackson and I here on Education Warfare, that's the plan. So it's a great email from Paul, really helping to kind of hone in on that, about those accumulation of bad days. What do we do? I've had students before in the past where every day it's, what's this kid going to do? And that again is exhaustion, because you know what? You may have that annoying coworker at work if you're not a teacher, and you're going to wake up and be like, oh, I hope I don't run into Bessie today. All she does is talk about her cat. And I love cats, but yeah, good example there. She just talks about her cat and won't leave me alone, just stands in my office and I can't get any work done. So you can do avoidant techniques. She's not part of it. We can't avoid little Jimmy, little Sally. They're going to be sitting there, because we all know that some of our problematic students who just need that little extra love and attention, and that's what we give them. Teachers often think like, they don't like my kid. I've never not liked a kid. One, because they're not an adult. They're a kid. I'm going to guide them. But I'm thinking about them. We wake up in the morning. My alarm goes off shortly after 5 a.m. every morning. If you have that student in your class you're constantly pulling out things to that toolbox, you wake up, your feet swing to the floor after your alarm goes off, you rub your eyes, you walk to start your shower water, and as soon as that sleep fog clears from your brain, you're thinking of that kid. How's today going to go? That is exhausting. That makes us just, when you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking how the day's going to go, you're thinking, what can I do? And that just starts to wear on us. Again, most burnt out profession in America. So being able to understand their development, being able to understand what they're thinking, like we talked about, being able to understand how schools work is really important for us. And that's why I'm doing this, And like I said, I had a student every day came in, and my wife loves to make this joke. Kevin Hart, one of our favorite comedians, my wife's a teacher as well. And it really is not that we're being mean to the student or anything, but just because that issue, we stand at the door and it's like, good morning. Good morning. Hey, how are you? Good morning. Hey, what's up? How's your weekend? Oh, awesome. Good morning. Then that student walks up and you're like, Kevin. And they're like, Dr. Lauer. Like, you just know, like, where's this going to go today, man? Let's both have a good day, right? But you're already thinking about that, and I always try that student. I try to talk to them about something. They come in as soon as I see them. I try to avoid that Kevin Hart joke where I'm like, Timmy, I'm trying to like, hey, what's up, man? Did you see? Try to find out their interest just to get them in that if they think they can trust you. A lot of it's a trust issue too. Think they can trust you, but you're still thinking like, hey, man, like in your head, you're like, I have this lesson today. It is going to have to go relatively fast. We're hitting 3 different parts. We're moving around. I need you not to just blow up one of the parts because, in the time we have in our classes, if you lose 5 minutes because you're dealing with something, that lesson's not going to get completed. You've timed this out. Or you have to build in, there's 5 minutes to make sure stuff's going right, which again is exhausting. We have to think about that. So we're building that in. So I've had students before it's like that, and we've all been there. And that does cause burnout. There are some days where you just had a rough couple days, maybe something's going on at home. We're talking about it in episode 2. You're stressed about something else, and then you're thinking about that. And sometimes the night before you eat dinner, you're sitting there, and then you start going over what you're gonna do the next day. You might just go, I don't know if I can. I might just put in for a sub. And that's the burnout and exhaustion we're talking about. And we need to get to where we're controlling that and not letting that exhaustion win and talking about its first thing. So I am so thankful for all of these emails. I'm so happy you all are listening. Keep telling people, keep growing it. If you think it'll help, if you're nodding along, I really appreciate it. Make sure everybody knows where they can find us. We're on Apple, Spotify. We are Pandora, Amazon Music, everywhere you can find us. Share it with them. Please leave us those 5 stars, leave us a review, and keep listening. Keep sending in your emails. Again, we're going to do next Tuesday, we're going to do episode 2, Exhaustion, the war at home. And then following that, we'll have another mailbag. So please don't feel like you have to wait till before you get an idea in your head. Shoot it over to educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. Share it with us. Talk to us about it. Might end up in one of the episodes, might have a shout out in one of the mailbags, might have a shout out in one of the episodes. But we want to keep this going because these emails were great and they just opened up my mind. Hope they opened up yours. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we'll have episode 2. Dr. Jackson will be back with me, and we're going to talk about the war at home with exhaustion and really break down how we drag that exhaustion work into our homes, how that can affect us there, and also how some things at home can then affect us and exacerbate that exhaustion at work. So we'll really break that down. So please listen. And I want to thank you for Dr. Jackson, for me. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of the fight.